Hi, my name is Harper Lawson, and I'm 35 years old. I serve as a major in the U.S. Army, a decorated officer with a TSS-CI clearance and years of combat-tested leadership. I've been deployed to some of the harshest war zones in the world. I've lost brothers in arms. I've endured the biting cold of the mountains and the smothering heat of deserts. I've stood in the silence between firefights, where the only thing louder than bullets is the voice in your own head. And yet, despite all that I've done, all that I've earned, my own family sees me as a disappointment. A placeholder. A footnote. My grandfather, General Raymond Shaw, made sure of that. Tonight, I stood in the grand ballroom of the Officers Club in Savannah, Georgia. The room was soaked in the scent of cigars, polished wood, and power. Men in pristine uniforms glided across the floor like they were born in them, smug, polished, future generals making small talk about defense budgets and Pentagon appointments like they were booking golf tee times. My own uniform was as crisp and pressed as any of theirs, but under the surface, I felt like it was still stained with the grit of the Middle East, with the dust of sacrifice they'd never understand. My brother, Ethan Shaw, stood near the fireplace like a golden child on display. He had never seen a day of combat, never kicked in a door or lost a friend in a blast. But he wore his legal credentials and Army JAG badge like inherited medals. He was everything they celebrated, clean, clever, untouched by the horrors of real war. I stood slightly behind him, always behind. Always the accessory. Always the shadow used to make his light seem brighter. And then it happened. The sharp ting-ting-ting of a spoon against glass silenced the room. Every head turned. And there he stood, General Raymond Shaw. Retired, but never without power. His mere presence sucked the air out of the room like a black hole. He raised his glass, his booming voice cutting across the room. "Gentlemen," he said, "tonight, we raise a toast to the future of the Shaw legacy. To my grandson, Ethan." He paused. His cold eyes slid over to me, sharp as a scalpel. The Shaw family produces leaders, thinkers, commanders. Not grunts who follow orders and get dirty in the mud. A sharp laugh echoed through the room. He wasn't done. "There are some girls," he said with a cruel grin, "who like to play soldier. But at the end of the day, their place is in the kitchen." The laughter that followed was loud and real. It washed over me like a wave of gasoline, and I stood there burning in silence. My spine was straight. My face unreadable. But inside, something cracked. My mother, Carolyn, standing beside me, squeezed my hand, a small gesture, frail and meaningless in the hurricane of shame. I turned to move, to breathe, to escape. And that's when it fell. A leather folder slipped from Ethan's hands, scattering documents onto the polished floor. One sheet drifted right to my boot. Reflexively, I bent to pick it up and froze. At the top, Department of Defense. Below, SF-86, the security clearance form I knew better than my own birth certificate. And on the line labeled Family Sponsor with Active Clearance. Major Harper E. Lawson, TSS-CI. But the signature underneath, it wasn't mine. It was Ethan's handwriting. A clumsy forgery of my signature. I recognized the loops. The very handwriting I'd taught him when we were kids, sitting at the kitchen table with coloring books and sugar cookies. He hadn't just forged my name. He desecrated our childhood. He was using my trust, my blood, my sacrifice as a key to unlock a future he didn't deserve. And my grandfather? The man who toasted his legacy and mocked mine? He knew. I could see it in the way he looked at me. Not surprised. Not concerned. Just amused. That was the night everything changed. I walked out of that ballroom like a soldier on autopilot, my hands clenched at my sides, my face calm, but inside, my mind was a thunderstorm. Every word from that speech echoed in my skull. Every laugh, every smug glance, every memory of being dismissed, erased. But the forged SF-86 form, that was more than insult. That was a felony. And it carried my name. Back in my small apartment in Destin, Florida, I stared at my living room like it was a battlefield. I dropped my uniform jacket over the armrest of the couch and stood there, staring out the glass door toward the dark waves rolling in. I thought of my team. The ones still deployed. The ones who trusted the system. And I thought of one in particular, Sergeant Cole Bennett, the man who died in my arms in Somalia, blood soaking the sand as he whispered his final words. His face wouldn't leave me. Not that night. Not ever. They were using my clearance, my oath, to build an empire of fraud. My name was stamped onto contracts, files, authorizations I'd never seen. I could already feel it, my trust being sold to the highest bidder. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over a single contact, my mother. Harper, she answered after 3 rings, her voice soft, hesitant. I didn't soften. I didn't ramble. I laid it out flat. The speech. The laughter. The forged signature. The way Ethan was using me, and how General Shaw was not only aware of it but orchestrating it. There was silence on the line. Then a deep, shaky breath. "I'm so sorry," my mother whispered. Her voice, always fragile, now held a hint of steel I hadn't heard in years. "I've let them chip away at you for so long, and I thought comforting you afterward was enough. But it wasn't. I was complicit." Another pause. "Not this time. This stops now. I have some of your grandfather's old letters. Documents. I don't know if they'll help, but they're yours." For the first time in my life, she wasn't just soothing me. She was standing with me. The next day, I sat across from someone who didn't need an explanation. I met her at a quiet little cafe tucked away in Carmel by the Sea, California, a place I knew offered discretion. Her name was Jenna Cross. Army JAG. Reputation. Fearless. She was already there, waiting, a black notebook beside her, her uniform immaculate. I told her everything. I slid the SF-86 across the table, the forged signature facing her. She didn't flinch. Didn't blink. "This," she said after a moment, her voice firm, "is felony fraud against the federal government. Your clearance isn't family property. It's a national asset. Your brother used it for personal gain. Your grandfather enabled it. That makes this not just betrayal. It makes it criminal." She closed her notebook with quiet finality. "They assumed you'd stay silent, Major. We're going to prove them wrong." That night, my apartment transformed into a war room. Jenna brought legal files, binders of military code, and a list of steps. She was surgical, efficient. Her mind worked like a combat map. And then she said, "We need someone who knows computers fast. Someone you trust." I made one call. 20 minutes later, the knock came. Logan Price, Master Sergeant, retired. My old teammate. My brother in everything but blood. He walked in with a battered laptop and 0 questions. "Tell me what you need," he said simply. And just like that, we were a unit. Jenna, Logan, my mother, and me. This wasn't just an investigation anymore. It was war. The hours that followed were filled with silent coordination, the kind you only see in special ops teams. Logan worked his laptop like a scalpel, scanning the forged SF-86 form, backing up files, cross-referencing metadata, and checking federal document authenticity protocols. Jenna reviewed every section of the UCMJ related to clearance fraud, government contract manipulation, and abuse of power. My mother quietly sifted through an old box from the attic in Asheville, North Carolina, filled with letters, receipts, and scribbled notes from General Shaw's decades in uniform, most of which he'd arrogantly believed would never be touched by scrutiny. Then Jenna asked a question that hung in the room like a live grenade. "Did your grandfather ever ask you to scan any of his old service records? Any files, commendations, archives?" And just like that, it came back. I remembered the silver lacy hard drive. He'd handed it to me 2 years earlier like I was some assistant. "Scan the Shaw family's legacy," he'd said. "You're good at computers. Just upload the old stuff and sign a couple of authorizations. Just formality." At the time, I was so starved for inclusion, so desperate for his approval, that I hadn't questioned it. I knelt, opened the footlocker beneath my bed, and there it was. Tucked between my old medals and a biography of Amelia Earhart, the very book my mother gave me after the family erased my portrait from the Wall of Honor, was the hard drive. I handed it to Logan, and he plugged it into his laptop without a word. A single folder appeared on the screen. Shaw_legacy. As Logan began the decryption process, my phone buzzed on the table. The caller ID sent an electric jolt through my spine. General Raymond Shaw. My eyes met Logan's. I raised a finger and nodded to his laptop's microphone. He hit record. The red light blinked on. I answered. "Hello, grandfather." His voice came smooth, practiced, the way he always sounded when trying to disguise a threat as wisdom. "I hear you've been causing waves, Harper. It's very unfortunate. You know how delicate Ethan's career is. A little mistake from a boy and here we are. But we can handle this." Quietly. I stayed silent. This doesn't have to go public. Family sticks together. You don't want to destroy your brother over a little pride, do you? And I don't want to be forced to take measures you'll regret. There it was. The threat. Dressed in velvet. I spoke just one sentence, cold and surgical. "I understand perfectly." And then I ended the call. Logan looked up from the screen. We got every word. Just then, the decryption finished. Folder after folder opened, not a legacy of service, but a blueprint of betrayal. One file hit like a sucker punch. Aegis Dynamic Solutions, a private defense contractor. I knew that name. They'd recently been awarded a multi-million-dollar drone surveillance contract for my unit in the U.S. Army. The documents were horrifying. Attached to every single contract was a forged clearance approval using my name, my rank, and my TSS CI status. My grandfather had used my service, my sacrifices, my identity, as a golden ticket to push shady defense deals through without vetting. The surveillance drones my brothers in arms depended on in the field, they weren't chosen because they were the best. They were chosen because my name, stolen and misused, had fast-tracked the deal. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was blood money. I turned to Jenna. My voice low, sharp, and steady. We got them. And war had officially begun. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my balcony in Destin, Florida, watching the stars blur into morning light, the salt air heavy on my skin. The hard drive sat beside me like a loaded weapon, because that's exactly what it was. Proof. A complete map of the betrayal. Names. Signatures. Financial trails. And at the center of it all, General Raymond Shaw, using his own granddaughter's honor to fuel a criminal empire. As the sun rose over the Gulf, my phone buzzed again. A text from one of my old team members. No words, just a screenshot. It was from Instagram. My brother Ethan, smiling in sunglasses on a white sand beach in Maui, a fruity drink in hand, surrounded by grinning friends. The caption read, "Hard work pays off. Grateful for my family's support." My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I thought I might be sick. I looked at the date. June 14th. That was the same day Cole Bennett, axe bled out in my arms in Somalia. While I sat on the floor of my apartment, remembering the sound of Axe's last breath, Ethan was tanning in paradise, drinking cocktails funded by the ghost of that sacrifice. I didn't think. I just hit call. He answered with a sleepy voice. "Harper, you're in Hawaii?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. "Yeah, what's the—" "Today is the anniversary of Cole's death. Do you even remember how he died?" Silence. "He died to protect men like you. While you were using my clearance to build your resume, he was dying so you could sit behind a desk and sip piña coladas. Do you have any idea what you're celebrating today? You're raising a glass on blood, Ethan. Mine. His. Ours. What are you talking about?" he mumbled. "You'll find out soon," I said and hung up. I couldn't sit still. I laced up my boots, bolted from the apartment, and ran straight toward the ocean. The pounding of my feet on pavement was the only thing drowning out the roar in my head. My legs burned, my breath tore through my lungs, but I kept running until I reached the Navy SEAL Memorial on the edge of the shore. I stopped there, hands on my knees, panting before the wall of names. And there he was. Sergeant Cole R. Bennett. I reached out and touched his name. My fingers shaking. He didn't die for politics. He didn't die so a corrupt general could buy beach houses and manipulate contracts. He died for honor. For the soldier next to him. For me. And now, they were using that sacrifice for profit. I closed my eyes and remembered my grandmother's voice, reading softly from her worn Bible all those years ago. "Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will strengthen you and help you." Isaiah 41 verse 10. That verse lit something inside me, not peace, but purpose. I wasn't alone anymore. I pulled out my phone and called Jenna. "Major," she said, answering in one ring. "It's time to attack." She didn't hesitate. "Then let's go to war." My call with Jenna was the ignition switch. We didn't waste time. We weren't playing defense anymore. We were planning a strategic strike. My apartment became a full-blown operations center. The small whiteboard I once used for grocery lists now held maps, charts, and arrows connecting names, companies, and crimes. It looked like a battlefield plan, and that's exactly what it was. Jenna stood by the window, her marker circling names with clinical precision. Logan hunched over his laptop, cross-referencing contracts with internal DoD approval chains. My mother sat quietly at the kitchen table, flipping through pages of her husband's and father-in-law's history, reading not with nostalgia, but with the resolve of someone searching for ammunition. "This isn't about Ethan," Jenna said firmly, drawing a thick red circle around my grandfather's name. "He's a pawn. A stupid, useful idiot. The real threat is General Raymond Shaw and the defense contractors he's feeding." Her voice sharpened. "We're going to hit him where it hurts: reputation and finances." We broke our mission into 3 phases. Phase 1, collect and consolidate every piece of evidence and find a cooperating witness inside Shaw's ring of trust. Phase 2, confront Shaw face-to-face, record a full confession. Phase 3, deliver a bulletproof case file to the Department of Justice and the Naval Inspector General simultaneously. We needed someone who had worked directly under Shaw, someone close to the contracts. That's when Logan, fingers flying across his keyboard, found him. Ryan Wells, former corporal, personal aide to Shaw. According to the discharge record, Ryan had left the Army just weeks after the largest Aegis Dynamic contract was signed and completely disappeared. No social media, no forwarding address. But Logan found him in an hour. Bozeman, Montana, working quietly as a carpenter in a backwoods shop. "He's scared," Jenna said. "That kind of disappearance? It's guilt or fear or both. If we can get him to testify, this case goes from strong to nuclear." I knew what had to be done. "I'll go." Jenna raised an eyebrow. "We could send a subpoena." I shook my head. "A subpoena will send him into hiding. He's a soldier. He won't talk to lawyers. He'll talk to someone who's been there." I packed a bag, boarded a red-eye, and flew into the Montana cold with nothing but a coat, a name, and the truth. I found Ryan in a dusty workshop that smelled like pine and regret. He looked thinner than in his file photo. Nervous. The kind of nervous you can't fake, the kind that stays with you after you've seen too much. When I said my name, he dropped the chisel he was holding. "I don't know anything," he stammered, backing away. I didn't push. I didn't accuse. I just sat on an old wooden stool and told him about Axe. About my unit. About how his signature had fast-tracked faulty drones over my brother's heads. "I'm not asking you to fight a general," I said softly. "I'm asking you to stand with the people you served beside. Right now, your silence is making them rich off our blood." He didn't look at me, but I saw the tension in his jaw, the clenching of his fist. I slid a card across the table with Jenna's number on it. "If you ever decide to do the right thing," I said, "call her." Then I left. The flight back to Florida was torture. I stared at the clouds, waiting, praying. And then, as we began our descent, my phone buzzed. It was Jenna. Ryan called. "He's in. Sworn affidavit incoming." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The cabin lights blurred as I closed my eyes. Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time to walk into the lion's den. Phase 2 had to be handled with precision. This wasn't a battlefield with bullets, it was one of power, legacy, and pride. If I wanted to catch General Raymond Shaw off guard, I needed to face him somewhere he felt invincible. Somewhere he believed no one could touch him. I chose the Army and Navy Club in Annapolis, Maryland, his sanctuary. A place so soaked in tradition that even the air felt like it saluted him when he walked in. Mahogany paneling, oil paintings of long-dead generals, and waiters who called him sir with reverence in their voices. I didn't wear my uniform. That would have made him cautious. Instead, I wore a sharply tailored charcoal suit, clean, civilian, precise. It was the kind of outfit that made people underestimate you. The kind that said, "I'm not a threat," when in fact I was armed with something far more dangerous than a weapon: evidence. And hidden in the inner pocket of my blazer was the most important item I carried: a sleek black fountain pen, elegantly designed but modified with high-fidelity recording hardware. It had one job: capture his confession. He was already seated in the private study when I arrived, reclined in a deep leather chair, a crystal tumbler of aged cognac in his hand. The lamp beside him cast long shadows that wrapped around him like armor. He looked exactly as he always had: untouchable, confident, cruel. As I entered, his eyes flicked up with faint amusement. "Well, well," he said, that condescending smile tugging at his lips. The puppy gruesome teeth. I didn't respond. I didn't confront him. I played the part one last time. "Grandfather," I said quietly, making my voice tremble ever so slightly. "I'm scared. Ethan told me to sign a few things, something about the family archives, and now I'm getting calls from lawyers. I don't understand. I don't want to get in trouble." The effect was instant. He leaned back, sipping his drink with smug satisfaction. The predator in him believed I was prey again. He'd ruled this family with arrogance for decades. One more frightened girl meant nothing. There, he said in that syrupy, manipulative tone. "You worry too much. You did your part. That's all that matters. No one will come for you, not if you keep quiet." He gestured toward the drink cart. "This world isn't about fairness, Harper. It's about leverage. Strategy. Your name, your clearance, those are assets. You should be proud we use them to build something that will last for generations. Frankly, I saved you the embarrassment of becoming some background officer in the sandbox. Now you're part of something meaningful." He took another sip, satisfied. And then, the arrogance spilled out like poison. "Fraud," he scoffed. "That's a word for weaklings. For victims. This isn't fraud, this is legacy management. You, Ethan, the rest, you're all instruments. Tools in my toolbox." There it was. The admission. Not just of guilt, but of philosophy. He didn't just commit crimes. He believed they were his right. I let a single tear slip down my cheek, kept my voice soft. "So, it was worth it to you?" He smirked. "Absolutely. I built this empire. And I'll be damned if some emotional little soldier thinks she can burn it down." I stood slowly. The frightened posture gone. My shoulders squared, my gaze level. From my blazer, I pulled the fountain pen. I didn't point it. Just uncapped it. Click. Then I slid it back in. "Thank you, General," I said evenly. "You just signed your own conviction." The smirk collapsed from his face. His eyes widened as the reality landed like a missile. I turned and walked out into the cold Annapolis air. The king had finally been checkmated. By the time I reached the sidewalk outside the club, the night air felt like ice on my skin, but it couldn't cool the fire burning in my chest. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a strange, hollow silence. The confrontation had been flawless. We had the confession. The voice, the arrogance, the entitlement, all preserved in perfect clarity. But I knew Raymond Shaw wouldn't go down quietly. And I was right. By midnight, retaliation arrived, not through lawyers or threats, but in the form of digital poison. An anonymous article surfaced on a respected military affairs blog, one read daily by generals, analysts, and former officers alike. The headline? "Concerns mount over decorated Army major's mental health after deployment." I stared at the screen, frozen. The article didn't mention me by name, but it didn't have to. Sources close to the Shaw family were quoted, claiming I had suffered serious psychological instability since returning from Somalia. They implied that I was erratic, delusional, unwell, a potential threat to national security. They were weaponizing PTSD. The same battlefield wounds the military claimed to support were now being used to discredit me. My phone rang. "Jenna." I saw it, she said, her voice calm but sharp. "It's textbook." He's trying to spin you as unstable so the evidence looks tainted. What do we do? Nothing. Let them scream into the void. This is desperation. We don't fight press with press. We fight it with indictments. Her words anchored me. I knew she was right. Still, it stung. To have everything I'd endured, the loss, the nights soaked in sweat, the faces I couldn't forget, twisted into a punchline, it was cruelty at its lowest. And then the phone rang again. My mother. But this time, she didn't sound hesitant. She didn't whisper. Her voice was clear, unwavering. I saw the article, she said. And I'm done staying silent. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I'm writing a sworn statement for Jenna, she continued. I'm going to tell them everything. The Thanksgiving hunting trip. How he laughed when you were sent to the kitchen. How he took your picture off the wall of honor. How your father stood by and said nothing. Every word of it. There was a pause. Then she added, I won't let them erase you. Not anymore. I felt the lump rise in my throat, sharp and hot. She wasn't just defending me. She was finally choosing me. That night, I sat in the darkness of my apartment, lit only by the street lamp outside. I scrolled to the two contacts I had never deleted, Raymond Shaw and Ethan Shaw. For years, I'd kept them in my phone, like a scar you can't stop touching. Hoping, foolishly, that one day they'd call to say we were wrong. But they never would. They weren't capable of it. I hit delete. Both of them vanished. And in their place, I tapped add contact and typed the name. Jenna Cross. The family I was born into had tried to break me. But the one I built was about to bring them to their knees. We called it the case file. It was a beast, nearly 2 inches thick when printed, with hundreds of pages of documents, testimonies, financial trails, and the full transcript of General Shaw's confession. It included the forged SF-86 with Ethan's handwriting, Ryan Wells' sworn affidavit detailing how Shaw instructed him to fast-track Aegis Dynamic Solutions, my mother's detailed statement about a lifetime of abuse, manipulation, and erasure, and the audio file, that perfect, arrogant confession Shaw gave me in the Army and Navy Club. We submitted it simultaneously to the Department of Justice and the Naval Inspector General, just as planned. No press leaks. No warnings. We delivered it like a stealth airstrike. The fallout was instant. Subpoenas. Federal audits. Military investigators knocking on doors before breakfast. The phrase security clearance fraud became front-page news. Every contractor linked to Shaw's ring came under scrutiny. His name, once spoken with pride, became a liability. The media dubbed it the Shaw scandal. But to those of us inside, it was something deeper. It was the beginning of a reckoning. General Raymond Shaw was indicted on multiple charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, abuse of authority, violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, federal contract manipulation. He was stripped of his privileges, his pension frozen, and held in federal custody pending trial. Ethan Shaw was arrested and charged with perjury, conspiracy, and unauthorized use of a security clearance. His law license was revoked. His carefully sculpted future, the one they tried to build using my name, shattered. The Navy and Army both launched internal reforms. A new clearance oversight policy was quietly implemented, nicknamed by officials the Lawson Protocol. It made sure no one else could ever be used the way I had. But the most unexpected part? The messages. Hundreds of them. From women. Soldiers. Pilots. Intelligence officers. Women I'd never met who had all faced their own silent wars inside the system. One message simply said, "Thank you for not staying silent. You gave us a voice." Weeks passed. The media frenzy faded. The hearings moved behind closed doors. And one morning, as I stood in my office at Naval Special Warfare Command in Tampa, a letter arrived. Cheap paper. A prison return address. From Ethan. It said, "I'm sorry." I read it once. Then again. I searched for truth. But there was nothing. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. That night, I went to the beach with Logan and Jenna. We built a fire in the sand near the dunes. The air smelled like salt and smoke. I pulled out the letter, held it in the flames, and watched it curl into ash. Some things can't be fixed, I said quietly. Jenna looked at me. And that's okay. Her words were a gift, not forgiveness, but permission. To move on. To breathe again. Months later, in my quiet office, I stared at a new file on my desk. It wasn't evidence. It wasn't legal paperwork. It was an application. To become the first female commander of a U.S. Army Special Operations team. No woman had ever held the post before. But I wasn't applying to make history. I was applying because I had earned it. I reached for my pen, the same one that had recorded the confession that started it all, and signed my name. Major Harper E. Lawson. A name they tried to bury. A name that now stood for justice. For strength. For survival. I stood and looked out the window as the morning sun rose over the base. Soldiers marched across the grinder below, calling cadence. The same cadence I once sang through gritted teeth, soaked in ocean salt, ignored by my family. Now I led. That was my storm. And I survived it. But maybe you have your own. Maybe it's not a general or a courtroom. Maybe it's a voice in your head that says you'll never be enough. That you don't belong. That you're just a shadow. But let me tell you, you are not a shadow. You are the fire. Your name, your voice, your future, they belong to you alone. And the pen to write your story? It's already in your hand.